Today's video is going to be very curiosity driven and a bit different than the type of content I usually make. The PS5 Pro is finally out, and as far as its rasterization capabilities, the RX 6800 non-XT has been chosen as a sort of equivalent. After all, it does match the quote-unquote up to 45% faster in rasterization. As far as the ray tracing, it's rumored to be RDNA 4, although we don't know this for sure exactly. But in this video, I wanted to compare my RX 6800 XT's ray tracing capabilities versus the PS5 Pro's Quality Mode in F124. According to Digital Foundry, F124 was one of the more impressive games that's got an update taking advantage of the advanced ray tracing and PSSR. If we take a quick look at the RX 6800, it's 60 compute units of RDNA 2. PlayStation 5 Pro is 60 compute units of whatever it is. We don't yet know exactly. Now the RX 6800 XT is supposed to be 14% faster than the 6800 non-XT, and it has 72 compute units. Now, I don't have a PlayStation 5 Pro, but Digital Foundry did do a review of the game, and we do know what it's using for ray tracing in its quality mode.
It's now possible to include 3 ray tracing options during the race itself, all while still running at 60 frames per second. In order, we get ray traced reflections, including opaque materials like glass. We get ray traced ambient occlusion for more realistic indirect shading, and finally, there's dynamic diffuse global illumination, or DDGI, allowing for simulated light bounce between surfaces. The one RT option missing during gameplay though is ray traced shadows.
So basically, PlayStation 5 Pro is using all the ray tracing effects in F124 except for shadows. Now as far as resolution, that's going to be a bit tougher to target.
In PS5 Pro's case, the native resolution is lowered to a range of 1440p to 1080p lowest instead, always adjusting based on rendering load and the demands of ray tracing on each track. To pick one example, pixel tests on a complex stage like Monaco come in at 1224p, or 56% scale of 4K.
Alright, so let's begin here. I'm going to go through quite a few different settings that I tested and tried. We know the PlayStation 5 Pro uses ray trace reflections, ambient occlusion, transparent reflections, and DDGI. It does not use ray trace shadows during gameplay. Now there is high and medium ray tracing quality. I'm going to set it to high. I'm going to assume that that's what the PlayStation 5 Pro uses, although I haven't found any information about it really. Now as far as the rest of the graphical settings, I've set everything to high with a couple set to ultra high. Some of these settings will also go to ultra high, but again, I'm not entirely sure what the PlayStation 5 Pro's quality mode equivalent is. I haven't seen anywhere or seen any comparisons. So we're going to start on high, but we can check ultra high as well. As far as the resolution, we're targeting 4K. And we're going to start with FSR performance. And the reason why is because we know the PlayStation 5 Pro uses 1080p to 1440p dynamic resolution scale, and then it uses PSSR to upscale that all the way to 4K. Now the PC version of the game does have dynamic resolution, but it doesn't actually work like the PlayStation 5's does. Tom, when he took a reading, a pixel count in Monaco, he said that it was 56% of 4K. We're using FSR performance, which would be 50% of 4K. So the PlayStation 5 Pro is probably running higher than that and maybe even lower in some cases, but it's dynamic and that's not something that we can really apply here. So that's why we're going to stick to performance, but we can check different modes and even raise some of the graphical settings to ultra high as well and test things out, because right now we are pretty well above 60 FPS, so we do have a bit of headroom. But since the PS5 Pro targets a locked 60 FPS, let's go ahead and try to do the same. We'll set a 60 FPS lock. And there we go, guys. We're now locked at 60 FPS. We have a very nice and smooth frame time graph. Our GPU use is well below 99%, so we do have some power to play around with if we wanted to. But I wanted to try Monaco because from what I understand, that is one of the more demanding maps in the game. So let's take a look at that and see how we do over there. All right, so we're now in Monaco, and I've gone back and set all the graphical settings that can go to ultra high. As far as FSR, it's still set to performance. Now, if you look at our GPU use, we're up in the 90s and upper 80s. So clearly raising some of those graphical settings to ultra high has put more of a load to our GPU. Also, this track has some areas that are more demanding, and we're actually not able to maintain a locked 60-100% of the time. Sometimes it does drop a little bit below, not much, maybe 58 or so, but the game still feels actually very, very smooth to play. For all its faults that FSR has, it doesn't actually have a ghosting issue in this game, although it does make things a bit flickery. And we also do lose on some of the finer detail, like, chain link fences and stuff like that, because we are upscaling from 1080p essentially. But I would say overall, the game looks pretty sharp, right? And there, right on the right of the buildings, you can see those beautiful ray trace reflections on the glass. It looks quite nice. All right, so before we move on to the next stage of my comparison, I wanted to point out some of the issues that I noticed with PSSR. I'll be using some of Digital Foundry's footage with this, and there's a disclaimer that this is footage captured off YouTube, so keep that in mind, that PlayStation 5 Pro would probably look quite a bit better in person, because YouTube does destroy a bit of the quality. But pay attention to the bottom half of the screen and the light poles as the camera moves. You can see it leaves a trail of ghosting behind, and that is a result of temporal upscaling. It's one of the side effects of it. It does happen. I would assume that Sony's going to tweak it and make it better, but it is something that it does stand out. Even if you look at the cars themselves, for example, right here, look at the car in front of us and the tires in the rear. You can see that there's ghosting trails that it leaves behind. So this is something that, like I said, Sony can work on and improve and make it better, but it is upscaling from 1080p or 1440p. So that is a flaw that I've noticed with PSSR. You can actually see the same exact thing in the car in front of us. If you look at the right tire, the shadow cast to the right side, it leaves a sort of a ghosting trail behind it. So again, that is something that does happen with temporal upscalers. Another example is during late afternoon. If you look at the car to the left, Ricardo, as the cars start to pick up speed, you can see that ambient occlusion, ray tracing, the cars leaving a bit of a ghosting behind. Same thing here if you look at the tires and the cars in front of us. Not a massive deal, but it does stand out a bit. All right, so those PSSR flaws aside that I noticed, let's get to the second stage of my testing. I've abandoned FSR in favor of XeSS, which is, too, a machine learning based upscaler like PSSR and DLSS, and on non-Intel GPUs it does use a DP4A fallback to power the algorithm, and it actually works quite well here. We have it set to performance mode with all settings on high, and we're back in Monaco with a race full of cars to make sure that we can run and maintain 60. Now, not to make this video longer than it needs to be, but I tested a lot of different scenarios. If I was to put the settings all to ultra high, I would not be able to maintain 60. It would fall into the mid 50s in some cases. So to guarantee a pretty much 99% of the time 60, if you put all settings to high and then ray tracing on, except for ray trace shadows and XeSS performance, it actually works extremely well, and it's really smooth, and it maintains 60. I never noticed any ghosting issues with XeSS, but XeSS in performance mode does have a bit of flicker with distant objects and thin lines like chain link fences and stuff like that. But overall, I think it actually looks pretty good. What do you guys think? But anyway, this is during daytime. Let's check out a very wet, very heavy rain, and if we can maintain 60 there, it's actually pretty good. A lot better than I thought it would. All right, so we're back in Monaco. Let's go over the settings so we're all on the same page. We have XeSS set to performance at 4K with the RX 6800 XT, ray trace shadows off, every other ray tracing effect is on, and all graphical settings to high. And we are actually able to maintain 60. It's actually pretty good. This guy behind us being pretty annoying. Won't leave me alone. Must have the wheels locked or something. But yeah, let's just fast forward through a lap so that you guys can see that it does maintain 60. We do get a couple of tiny little nudges here on this turn. This turn is one of the most demanding parts of the track. And then right after the finish line, there's also another little demanding area. But it does overall maintain 60, 99% locked. So that's pretty good. Alright, so that was the ray tracing. The PlayStation 5 Pro also has a 120 Hz mode without ray tracing. And that's what I wanted to check out here too. I started with just turning ray tracing off. All the graphical settings are still on high, and XeSS is on performance again. And that takes us to well above 120 FPS. So the PlayStation 5 Pro still uses 1080p to 1440 and uses TAAU to upscale to 4K. Now for this one, I'm using XeSS Performance, which is 50% of 4K, so we're upscaling from 1080p, although the PlayStation 5 Pro does stay closer to 1440p than 1080p according to Tom of Digital Foundry. But yeah, this is actually pretty good performance. I think if we wanted to target 120, we can spend a little bit more of our budget into raising the graphical settings perhaps. So let's try it. Okay, so I've gone back and raised all the graphical settings to ultra high, and XeSS is still on performance mode. And we're right around 120, guys. We do dip a bit below that, but still, this is very, very smooth on a VRR display. It looks great. I'm playing on an LG C1 OLED TV. Let's fast forward so you can see it runs really well. And I mean, that's one of the beauties of PC gaming, right? You can kind of trade some settings for other settings and tweak things and come up with the way you want to play. And I will be actually showing you right before we end the video very soon how I would play the game. Now, since we have power in our budget here, we can bump up our upscaling from performance. We can go to balance. I think we should be fine. Even if we drop below 100 FPS, I don't think we're gonna, but let's check it out. Yeah, we're still doing pretty good here, and the image quality has gone up a little as well. Well, let's try the next best thing and disable upscaling altogether. Let's go native 4K TAA, no ray tracing, maxed out graphical settings. And again, that's one of the beauties of PC gaming, right? I mean, I appreciate that they've put in 120 FPS mode on the PS5 Pro. But what if I want to say play at 4K 60, but native 4K? Now, I'm not sure. Maybe there is such a mode on PS5 Pro's version. I haven't heard anything about it. But here we can do it. And as you can see, that ray tracing takes a massive amounts of performance to drive forward, guys. I mean, look at this. We have all graphical settings maxed out. Native 4K TAA. And we're still well above 100 FPS, right? So yeah, ray tracing is very costly, but I do think that ray trace ambient occlusion does look pretty nice and does add some depth. So let me show you how I would play this game if I was to use this GPU. Well, this would be one mode. This would be my performance mode. And this would be my ray tracing mode, which only has ray traced ambient occlusion. All the graphical settings are completely maxed out, and we've set XeSS to quality mode. So we're essentially upscaling from 1440p all the way to 4K, and the game looks absolutely stunning this way. Again, I do feel that ray traced ambient occlusion is the most impactful ray trace setting in the game. It does add some nice depth, three-dimensional depth to the overall image, which I think looks pretty nice. And with this setting and a 60 FPS lock, we're able to maintain 60 with plenty of GPU headroom to play with, right? We could probably even add another ray tracing effect if we wanted to, but I think this would probably be my ray tracing mode, and my performance mode would be the one previous to this. But I think we've arrived at the end of our video here, guys. I guess to wrap up my thoughts, based on what I tested here, I do think the PlayStation 5 Pro is a bit more capable in ray tracing. And the reason why I say that is because, well, we had to put our graphical settings all on high, and to be fair, I don't know what the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro's quality mode is using as far as graphical settings, not ray tracing. I mean, for all I know, it could even be using some medium ones. I'm not entirely sure. But I had to consistently upscale from 1080p in order to maintain a locked 60. That includes during the rain and a track full of cars. That is important because the PS5 Pro is able to do that in rain with a track full of cars. But according to what Tom said, his recorded upscaling percentage was 56. So 56 is actually a lot closer to FSR or XeSS balance than it is performance. So technically I was upscaling from slightly lower resolution. Again, we're kind of nitpicking here a bit. But at the same time, right, if the PS5 Pro is 60 compute units of RDNA 4, I mean, I would have expected probably a bit higher ray tracing performance from 60 compute units of RDNA 4. Again, we don't know exactly what the compute units on the PS5 Pro are made of because Sony hasn't released an official statement, and I don't think they're going to until AMD's next-gen GPUs come out, because it sounds like they're using technology from those GPUs. So that was one of the reasons why I also wanted to test the 6800 XT, because before the Pro actually came out, I was leaning more towards using my 3080 Ti maybe. Not really anymore. The 3080 Ti is probably a lot faster in ray tracing than the Pro, if I'm being honest. But still, the Pro seems to be pretty interesting. And this was only F124. I do want to check out some other games. As a matter of fact, here's a quick little sneak peek of Alan Wake 2 on the 6800 XT with ray trace reflections on high, by the way. If you guys are interested in me making a video about this, leave a comment down below. Let me know, and give the video a like too while you're at it. Also subscribe if you haven't. I do appreciate it. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I do appreciate you all watching, and I had fun making this because I am curious about this stuff. This isn't like a PC elitist channel at all. I like consoles. I have consoles. I have a PS5. I have a Switch with a ton of games. I have a lot of handheld systems, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, 2, 1, and a bunch of physical games. So yeah, I do like consoles as well, although I prefer PC as my main platform. But that's going to be it, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Give the video a like and leave a comment down below. Let me know how you feel. I'll see you next time. Peace out.